Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a conversation about the mundane. One thing that we can promise is that our conversation will be less than fascinating, so you can feel free to just drift off. Thank you for joining me. We hope you will listen and sleep. I'm your host, Marco Timpano. My mics have been put into a different position, so hopefully this will make the podcast sound even better. And someone who's going to make my podcast sound even better is my guest. And today, my guest is Jenny Arena. Welcome, Jenny, to the Insomnia Project.
Thank you, Marco. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jenny, you and I have known each other for years, and we met each other through an audio world, for lack of a better explanation. Do you want to fill the listeners in on how or where we met?
Yes. So Marco and I actually were part of a radio show on York University Radio. I'm going to say, do I dare say how many years ago, Marco?
You can or you don't have to. Let's just say, a few years back.
A few years back, York University Radio, CHRY. The program was called Red Hot and Green, geared towards second and third generation Italian Canadians. Mm-hmm. So I was actually introduced by someone who was already part of the program. She had me sit in and see what was going on, thought I would be interested.
Who was that?
Carmelina.
Oh, Carmelina Krupi. Hello, Carmelina. I need to get her in the studio.
Yes.
I need to get everyone from Red Hot and Green in
that
the
would
studio.
Be great. Maybe a little Red Hot reunion.
Yeah. Everyone knows who listens to this podcast, and I will often reference my Italian background or my Italian culture, and I'm sure some of you roll your eyes. But that's how I got into radio, really, was through my culture. And I have a love for my heritage, and so do you. And I hope our listeners have a love for theirs, whatever it may be. Now, Jenny, one thing that's really fascinating is you and I have roots in the same part of Italy.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
For sure. So we are both from the southern part of Italy, the toe of the boot, if you will, Calabria. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's your dad's side that we are connected on in terms of the location, correct, Marco?
You got it. And both your folks are from Calabria, right?
Yes, both my parents.
Mm-hmm. And Calabria is the toe and a little bit more than, because if I say the toe, people just think that tip part, but it's also from the toe to just before you hit the sole.
Probably, yeah, that's a good description. I would say that's a fair description.
Before the arch. I love talking about. Speaking of boots, what do you value in a good boot, Jenny?
Oh, comfort all the way. Comfort. Okay. First and foremost, comfort. In fact, even comfort over fashion, I'm not going to lie.
Okay. But do you appreciate a leather boot, or does that not matter?
Leather, yes, absolutely. Good quality leather, soft. It's similar to, I did actually pick up a pair of really nice boots in Tuscany, which they're known for their leather in that area of Italy. So, yes.
Are they functional boots for our weather, is my question.
Probably not for our weather, no. Very comfortable, very well made. But yeah, probably not the most functional.
So what do you use? I know we're just on a tangent here, but
that's all right.
What do you use for our winter weather boot-wise?
You know what? I'm a big fan of Timberlands.
Oh, really?
I love the Timberland, yes.
Okay.
They're comfortable, somewhat fashionable, you know, and they're made to stand up to, snow, sleet, slush, all that fun stuff.
For me, the tread is so important in our weather.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you don't have a good, deep tread, like in a snow tire, let's say, it can be very slippery, especially if you hit, when snow hits ice and you don't see it because it's covered with snow and you just get that immediate slip.
Yes.
That's when you need that traction.
For sure. Yes. Especially if you're wandering through streets like Montreal where they don't even shovel the sidewalks.
Or the cobbles, they have old Montreal has cobblestones. Getting back to the boot of Italy.
Yes.
After that tangent of what boots we like to wear, tell me about let's talk about Calabria.
Okay. So I was actually born and raised here in Canada. However, very passionate about my parents' Calabrese roots. Grew up speaking the Calabrese dialect actually before I was even introduced to the proper Italian.
Or the standard Italian, which is spoken, throughout all of Italy, right?
Exactly.
Or understood throughout all of Italy.
And
if pardon me for
no,
cutting
not
you
at
off,
all.
I want to mention your website. Jenny, along with being a great friend of mine, has a website. She's a food blogger, and that's called Fables and Focaccia. And that also sort of intersects with your Southern Italian roots. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. Just a quick segue into the name, Fables being stories. So I'm a storyteller, and I love to share the stories that go behind the food that I'm preparing.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some of those stories. So it's going to be a little insomnia trigger warning that this episode might get a little bit more exciting than what you're used to when we talk about those stories. So I'm just giving you the heads up in case you need to refer to another episode to fall asleep to. Some of our listeners like to just sort of use our podcast to ease anxiety or just enjoy their evening. So I'm just giving you that heads up. So back to Calabria, back to southern Italy. People might not be as familiar with Calabria as they are with Tuscany or with Rome or Milan or Venice. What would be something that people would recognize that comes out of that area that we both share as our heritage?
I would say one of the things is the history. One of the famous discoveries was the bronze statues, the Greek bronze statues, bronzi di Riaci is the translation, which when the discovery was made, I believe in the 1970s, it was pretty big to do worldwide.
And the interesting part of the discovery is where they were found.
Absolutely, in the sea.
Yeah.
They uncovered them in the sea, and it's funny because old Calabria, like some of the older towns, like there's a town called Locri, which is actually built on like old Greek ruins. So you can find a lot of the old kind of historic things in that town.
And parts of Calabria sort of oscillated between being part of what eventually became Italy to what was Greece. So if I'm not mistaken, the Greek mathematician Pythagoras was born in what is now Calabria, which was formerly Greece.
Yes.
So I find that always so fascinating, how countries, how places on the planet have oscillated between other places or other countries based on war or based on a whole bunch of other different factors.
So Calabria, interestingly, like Sicily, much like Sicily, both being in the south, very strong influences from the Greeks, from the Arabs. So you will find that in some of the architecture. You'll find that in the food as well.
It's interesting that you picked the bronze statues as the signifier to what is Calabria for the world. Because if I may, I'll pick mine and see if we're, close to on the same page. So think about what your number 2 would be, and I'll tell you what my number 1 is.
Okay.
And that is bergamot.
Yes.
So most of the world's bergamot comes from Calabria.
Absolutely, yes. They are actually probably the primary grower of bergamot for all of Italy.
And a lot of times when you look at the source of bergamot, now for our listeners who are like, what is bergamot? If you've ever had Earl Grey tea, it's bergamot that gives it its distinct flavor.
So yes, and that is a flavor that throughout Calabria, particularly in recent years, has been in the flavor profile has been introduced in many components such as liqueurs, jams. So you're finding a lot more bergamot product coming out of the area.
And if you're still scratching your head and thinking to yourself, but Jenny and Marco, I still don't know what bergamot is. You mentioned what its flavor is like and that it's used in products. What is the actual food item? How would you describe it, Jenny?
I think if I had to describe it, it's a cross between like a lemon and a lime, maybe some orange, kind of a really ugly looking lemon.
A citrus, yeah. I would say it doesn't look spectacular, and unlike orange and lime, you can't necessarily just cut it and eat it, or like an orange, let's say, because you wouldn't do that with a lime and lemon. But it's definitely used for flavoring.
Absolutely, yes.
Let's get into some of the stories. You talked about fables and focaccia and how you talk about stories behind food.
Mm-hmm.
What's one of your favorite stories?
You know what? For me, it's more of I would say more of a lifestyle than a story.
Okay.
But I love the fact that my parents growing up in a poorer area of the country, if you will. So they had to use up everything. Nothing went to waste. And that belief or that no food waste philosophy has stuck with me to this day. Like, I'm still a huge proponent of no food waste.
And it's actually come to light now, and it's part of culinary culture. Those terms like from nose to tail cuisine and whatnot, where nothing gets wasted.
Yes, every part of the animal, for example, gets used. And then a great example of this is Massimo Bottura. He's like one of the Michelin star chefs in Italy, and he has actually taken it to a whole new level where he's even opened up a restaurant where they serve leftovers, basically. Yeah. So what is left over from other restaurants or from grocery stores, they take it and they prepare incredible meals with it.
Is there a leftover, or is there a part of some food item that may get wasted in someone else's kitchen that doesn't get wasted in yours?
You know what? Bread, believe it or not.
Okay. Tell me about that.
A lot of people tend to just throw away bread after it goes stale, right?
Sure.
You eat it when it's fresh, yes, nice and crispy on the outside, soft on the inside. But
hey, I'm guilty of that too. So if you're listening and saying I do that, listen, I'm on page with you. So tell me, what do you do with your bread when it's no longer freshly baked, let's say?
Okay, well, first of all, you can actually reconstitute it a bit.
Okay.
If you've had the bread for maybe just a couple of days, if you wrap it in foil, add just a little bit of water to it, put it in the oven, bake it for a few minutes, maybe like 10 minutes on like 350 degrees. It will actually come out tasting like fresh bread again.
Oh, there you go. You know how you can reconstitute cheese, hard cheese? Have you ever done that?
No.
So sometimes if you leave, let's say, a chunk of Parmigiano out, it gets dry and it no longer has that sort of how can I describe it? That cheese, like it becomes hard. It becomes hard, and it almost has a oiled coating over it, and it looks almost like it's a brick. Almost at that point, it no longer looks like cheese. If you take a tea towel and wet it so that it's damp, and wrap the cheese in the tea towel and put it in your fridge for a day or two, the loss of water from the cheese will get reabsorbed, and it will become more like it once was.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'll have to remember that next time I've got some cheese that's a little bit on the harder side.
Back to bread.
Okay, so yes, you can reconstitute it. I will make my own breadcrumbs from it. So I will toast it off in the oven. And then grind it up to make my own breadcrumbs or croutons for salads.
Simple enough.
Yes. Also, it makes great stuffing. So, chop it up, add some other flavoring elements to it, and you've got yourself a stuffing. Bread pudding is always a huge hit as well.
Of course.
Not a very Italian dish, but you know what? I'm a mom, and my kids absolutely love it. So it's a nice treat. And I've made it both savory and sweet. So
I didn't realize you could have a savory bread pudding.
So yeah, you could do for like a lunch with a salad. Again, it's your same base like with eggs. Like you make the custard with milk and eggs, but you would add savory elements like maybe some Parmigiano cheese or some sun-dried tomatoes. I made a version of it once with rapini, broccoli rabe, and some sausage. That was a great brunch dish. So
my wife will often make a dish called estrada, which I've never heard before. It's certainly not any area of Italy that I know, but that's what she calls it. And she'll take leftover bread and she'll rip it up in pieces and then incorporate it into a egg dish that she then bakes. So, egg, sausage, tomatoes, whatever is lying around, mixed with this bread in like a casserole dish with cheese, plenty of cheese, whatever cheese she happens to have. So if it's mozzarella, it's mozzarella. If it's cheddar, it's cheddar. Whatever we have that's a good melting cheese. And then she'll pop it in the oven and bake it and then slice it up, and we'll have it for breakfast.
There you go. Yeah, similar. I would say it's probably similar to, same idea as the savory bread pudding.
Any story connected with food that surprised you or you found humorous?
There's one. Again, it kind of relates back to sort of the poor upbringing of people from the South,
Sure.
and how they would make other ingredients try to resemble something that maybe a more noble family would have. So, for example, and it's funny, speaking of breadcrumbs.
You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it going to be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-through burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Dear McDonald's, your breakfast menu? Fire. 10s across the board. I could be happy with anything, even though I ordered the same thing every time. Thanks for not judging me. I'll try something new next time. Maybe.
Score a 2 for $5 deal on a sausage McMuffin with egg and more. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Were often tossed with pasta to resemble parmigiano. So they often refer to breadcrumbs on pasta as the poor man's parmigiano.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So again, it's making use of what you have. And then, so that's something I found very interesting for sure, is sort of that reusing items and trying to turn them into something else.
I want to deviate here and talk about kitchen tools.
Yes.
What are 3 of the tools in your kitchen that get used the most?
Definitely a good knife. I did invest in one of those nice Willing knives, and get it sharpened properly.
Okay.
Because you can never, you need a good sharp knife in the kitchen.
They say the most dangerous thing in the kitchen is a dull knife.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The second thing I would say is probably a really good microplane, because I use it for, again, you can use it for grating cheese, grating things like nutmeg or cinnamon, grating chocolate for desserts. So it's a multi-purpose tool for sure. And you know what? The hands, believe it or not.
Oh.
The hands are the chef's or the cook's best friends.
Sure.
You can do so much with your hands, kneading, mixing. Really, I think that's the key. That's the key piece of equipment is the hands.
Now, do you have any secret advice that you discovered that you're like, I wish I knew this years ago, and now that I know it, it's my favorite thing? I'll give you an example so you can be like, okay, just to think for a moment. I discovered, and I've talked about it on the podcast before. Jenny, I talk about things, and then I'll re-talk about them in other episodes, so I can only imagine what listeners think when they hear me go on about certain things. But the best way to peel ginger is with a spoon.
Oh, yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, so if you have to peel ginger and you use a knife, you're cutting off so much of the ginger. There's so much waste. But if you take a spoon, ginger is relatively soft, and you just scrape it with the spoon, the skin from the ginger comes right off, and it is phenomenal. Another tip that I learned is if you're making hard-boiled eggs, you know how it's difficult sometimes to take the shell off the hard-boiled egg? Sometimes it'll stick to the actual egg and it'll be tricky. Put a little bit of vinegar in the water that you boil with. Yeah, and then cool them right away.
Oh, my goodness, Marco, you taught me something new today.
Well,
I'm always struggling with those hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah, so I don't even measure. So I'm boiling the water, and then I'll just kind of white vinegar, pour it in as much as quanto basta, as much as you want. And then once they're done, put them under cold water right away, and then peel them soon thereafter. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try that, and I'll let you know how it works
Okay.
out for sure. Let me think. Hang on. That's a tough question.
I gave you all that time to think, and she was too wrapped in listening to what I had to say.
I like to absorb information, especially when it comes to cooking.
Here's another tip. So, do you make fresh pasta?
I do.
Do you use the pasta?
The pasta machine?
Like it's like a little.
Like a hand crank almost.
Thank you, because I don't want people to think it's like the one that you get with the. I'm making a hand gesture. You know that big machine?
The KitchenAid mixer. Thank you. Yes.
Right now, I'm just miming it. It's like we're playing charades, and Jenny has to guess what I mean. But if you use the hand crank one, the one that sort of has a vice grip to your surface, table, or whatever you're doing, never wash that. Never wash the inside because it'll rust.
Yes.
Just dust it with a bit of flour, and if you have a brush, just clean it out that way, but do not put that in the dishwasher, especially, but do not wash it with water, because if any water stays within the mechanisms, it will rust, and there goes your machine.
Okay. Well, actually, now on that vein, you reminded me of
I
something.
knew I
There
would.
you go. Okay. Speaking of equipment, so I'm old school, and when I make my espresso coffee, I use the stovetop mocha. Which is like a little pot you brew the espresso on top of the stove, for anyone who may not know.
Bialetti being the quintessential maker of that stovetop coffee maker, which looks like kind of like the Tin Man.
That's
from
a
the Wizard of
great
Oz.
way to describe it, actually, Marco. Yeah, if you had to describe it, the Tin Man, yes.
It's one of those things that if you have it or you know it, it's you can visualize it. But if you don't, you're like, what exactly are they talking about?
So the mocha, much like a wok, needs to be seasoned, and so that's one thing that I learned a little bit later in life, that you're not supposed to wash it with soap and water. Yes, you do rinse it out with water because you do have to get the coffee grinds out of the machine, but never use soap on it. It just needs to be seasoned, much like a wok. So the more you use the mocha, the better your coffee ends up tasting.
In fact, you'll see in people's kitchens their mocha or their coffee pot maker from their grandparents or their parents, and it just looks like it's been through everything. You're like, that's the ugliest kitchen equipment you've ever seen, and it will make the best espresso coffee, because I have a fairly new one, and I know it needs a few years before it really comes out wonderful. So for example, if I'm making you an espresso after this podcast, I will not be using that. I will be using one that the handle is
Burnt off.
cracked, and you'll be like, and you know, anyone who knows their espresso won't even bat an eyelash if they see that, because they know, oh, that's the coffee maker that makes the best coffee in the house.
I think basically anything that you see some wear on, even for baking stones, for example. I like to use stoneware in the kitchen for baking. It gives you like a nice crisp pizza dough, for example. If you're making pizza, bake it on stoneware, and it's nice and crispy.
Are you talking about those like
Those pizza stones, like the round?
plates
Yes,
they're like
that's
round.
yes, flat and round, and it literally looks like a piece of stone or a piece of clay. Again,
is it made of ceramic? What is
no,
it?
it's stone. It's I can't remember what stone it is
But it is a
exactly,
stone.
but it's a
Okay.
stone. And again, that doesn't get washed with soap and water. It just gets rinsed off or brushed off. And the more you use it and season it, then the uglier it looks. It turns it looks like horribly burnt brown,
Right.
but you will get the best pizza off that stone.
Oh, wow. What do you use when you make gnocchi to shape your gnocco? That's a question of all questions of all time that you can ask an Italian, and it'll take them a moment. What is the item that you use to make your gnocco shape when you're making gnocchi?
So I actually use a gnocchi paddle.
You do?
I
Okay.
do use a gnocchi paddle. So it's, I don't know, how would you describe it? Almost like a mini washing board with a handle?
So picture an item the size of a computer mouse that is flat, made of wood, and ridged with a small handle. Ridged like a washboard, but people don't know what a washboard is anymore.
Yes, that's true in this day and age.
Corrugated.
Perfect.
There
Yes,
you go.
Marco, corrugated. Yes.
So you use that.
I do use that.
Okay.
However, I'm not going to lie. In times of laziness, I will quickly roll it over a fork.
Okay.
Yes, because with the paddle, you do have to, keep flouring it from time to time.
Of course you have to.
Yeah. So, but when I'm really kind of whipping them out quickly, then I just kind of roll the dough over a fork.
Okay. See, I have the what do we just call it? The
gnocchi paddle?
The gnocchi paddle. I prefer them just cut, not even
not
rolled.
even ridged.
No, I like them as pillow-like as possible. That's my favorite. Although I
okay.
do have the gnocchi paddle, and I know that's the classic, or let's say the proper way, because you're giving ridges to the gnocchi, which will soak up more sauce. But give it to me pillow-like, and I'm happy as can be.
That's true. Actually, to go back to that, the original tool is a basket. So if you go through Italy and you see like a nonna or a grandmother making gnocchi, she'll often have like a basket, and she rolls the gnocchi off the bottom of that basket to
So
get
that
those
the
ridges.
those ridges come from the weave of the basket.
Of the basket,
Oh, I didn't
yeah.
know that. I've seen pasta made with spokes from a bicycle.
Yes, that as well too. The in Italian they call that the maccheroni al ferro.
Yeah.
With an iron is the literal translation.
Yeah,
but
it might not actually be a spoke from a bicycle, but it has that steel shape of a bicycle.
yeah,
or
almost like a knitting needle, but thinner.
yeah.
A little bit thinner than a knitting needle, I would say. Yeah. So the pasta dough gets rolled around that.
What's the surface that you use when you're baking or making dough?
So I actually had my father made for me a giant wood board. So like think the most massive cutting board you've ever seen.
Okay.
I like to use that. Marble is a good surface too, but I don't always have marble handy, let's face it.
It's heavy too, right?
And it's heavy to move. Yeah, like moving a piece of marble versus moving a piece of wood board. Totally different.
But the beauty of marble, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never used it to make anything, is it stays cool, right?
Yes.
So when you're working the dough, your hands will heat it up, but the surface will keep it cool? Is
Yes,
that
the
right,
surface
Giselle?
keeps it cool, and it doesn't stick either, because I do have to heavily flour my wood surface for things not to stick sometimes.
I need to make a correction, because on a previous episode that I had with Marilla Wax, I talked about a Devonshire clanger, but what I meant to say was a Bedfordshire clanger. So I picked the wrong place, and I'm sure my UK listeners were stomping their feet and very upset about it. So I'm correcting myself. It is not the Devonshire clanger, but the Bedford clanger.
Okay, Marco, you
Bedfordshire
care to
clanger.
explain what that is? Because
Yeah.
I'm a little bit stumped right now.
Okay, Jenny, I need you to make this item.
Okay.
You don't have to make it for me. I just need you to make it because I need to know someone who's made it. So will you do me this favor at some point? Doesn't have to be now. It can be months ahead, but you make this thing and then you report back to me.
Okay.
So the Bedfordshire clanger is a pastry dish that they made in Bedfordshire for the men who would go work in various places where they had to, like, I don't know if they have mines, so I don't want to say the mines, but they would go off to work, and this would be their lunch, part of their lunch. And it's a pastry that they would fill. Now, a clanger is just traditionally filled with, let's say, pork, or you could make a sweet or savory version of it. So you could make an apple turnover type clanger or a meat-filled pastry. But in Bedfordshire, this is what they did. They took the clanger and they did half with pork and half with apple. And they would divide it. They'd put a little bit of the pastry in the between so they wouldn't mix. So that if you, the person who was going off to work, were having this, you could eat one side and that was your savory, and then flip it over or get to the bottom and you would get to your dessert.
Wow, that is genius.
So I went online the other day to see if there's recipes on how to do it, and I'm going to try to do it. But since you are an expert in the kitchen, I just want you to do a clanger and let me know.
So on that.
Okay.
I love that idea. I think that's genius. 2 in 1.
Yeah, so when I was talking with Marilla Wax, I was talking about it, and I couldn't remember the name of it, and please forgive me because it's just my own lack of memory and whatnot, because I really do love the United Kingdom, and I love going there. And something about me, Jenny, that I don't know if you know because we share the same heritage, but there's something about British things that makes me so happy. So if I could eat a scone and drink a tea and have clotted cream and jam, you won't see me any happier than that.
That is pretty much a picture of happiness right there. So, and the UK is actually on my bucket list of places to visit.
Have you not been?
I have not been, and I did swear that my next travel destination would be the UK. So hopefully I'll get around to it in the next year.
It's one of those places that every time I go, I love it more and more. And there's other places on the globe that I really enjoy. And I always mention, I love New Jersey. Every time I go to New Jersey, I just have a great time. Every time I go to Calgary, I have a fantastic time. And every time I go back to LA, I love it more and more. So those are the places that always resonate with me. And I wasn't a huge fan of LA the first time or the second time I went. But now that I'm going more and more, it's like, I really am starting to appreciate Los Angeles. So there you go.
That's great, Marco. So maybe I'll have to get some travel tips from you then next time I make a trip. I did stop in Los Angeles once, a few years ago. Drove through, did the very touristy thing.
Of course, you
Hollywood
have to.
Boulevard, Universal Studios, that kind of thing. But I'm sure there's much more to it than that.
There's nothing wrong with doing those things, especially if you have a limited time. When you go to New York, there's so much to do, but I feel like you have to cross off some of those classic things because you've seen them in film, TV, and literature that you're like, I just got to see it with my own eyes, whether it be the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, Wall Street, whatever it is, right? Anyways, that brings us to the end of this podcast.
Oh, wow, that was a quick time frame.
I'm telling you, Jenny, from talking about our boots to clangers and bergamot and everything in between.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Marco, for having me.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and I do invite you back to the Insomnia Project anytime you want, but after you make the clanger so we can talk about that as well.
That sounds great. I will definitely do that.
Thank you for listening to the Insomnia Project. Please send us an email of topics you'd like to see us cover, and if you have any tips with regards to food items or food tools that we can pass on to our listeners, we always appreciate that. This episode was recorded in Toronto, Canada, and it was produced by Drumcast Productions. We hope you listened and slept.